Do you know what the absolute blessing is about making an audio podcast? It's the fact that you can hit that record button and you don't even have to bother putting on any clothes or cleaning yourself up. You can just sit in your own filth, is what is what I'm doing tonight. Let's get into it. Legends, welcome along to Sceammeupbotty, new episode here. I am currently getting over my second shot of vaccination against COVID-19 and feeling the effects of it in a big bad way. The headache is hanging about, and yes, I just feel fairly under the weather at the moment, so I'm thankful that that I can actually just, be on a podcast where I don't have to be actually seen. So, not making much of an attempt at putting any YouTube videos together this week. But we're going to get into Star Trek 2009, the reboot of Star Trek. When this was coming along, I was kind of pretty not against it. I don't want to say I was against it because J.J. Abrams was directing it, and at that point I was a fairly big fan of J.J. Abrams' work, and since then, not so much the case. And his work on Star Trek did actually factor into the fact I'm not that big a fan of him anymore. But Star Trek from 2009, I actually really dug this film. I really did enjoy it. But again, you're thinking to yourself, okay, we're going to be doing a reboot on Star Trek here. They're going to be messing with the classic characters, giving a new group of actors the front row seats for the guys that we grew up with. No Shatner. Of course, Leonard Nimoy came back for this film, but of course Spock was recast as well. Now, I have to say, as far as casting goes in this movie, fairly happy with it. Chris Pine plays a pretty good James T. Kirk. Zachary Quinto is actually great as Spock, though nobody's going to beat Nimoy, but when it comes to a close second, Quinto isn't bad at all. With Bruce Greenwood on here playing Pike, the main villain Nero is Eric Bana. Now, Bones in this film is very, very good. Carl Urban, absolute flippin' legend. He's really, really good in anything I've seen him in so far. Zoe Saldana is in there as Uhura. John Cho as Sulu. Anton Yelchin as Chekhov. I did enjoy him in the film as well. But, gotta say, that's not all upside. I have to say, Simon Pegg as Scotty, I was kind of like, what then under God were you guys thinking casting Simon Pegg as Scotty? Now, I've got nothing against Simon Pegg as an actor or anything he's done up to this point, but for Star Trek and especially Scotty, it just didn't fit with me. Now, if you enjoyed him as Scotty, that's all good. That's all fine and well. We've all got our own opinions and we're entitled to them. But for me, he just was the one thing that definitely did not work in any of these movies. The comedy that he does bring is good in the movie, but I don't know. It's not a choice I would have made. But anyway, the movie itself is actually a pretty damn good time. I have to say, I definitely, when I watched this movie, really, really entertaining. The idea of Romulus being in threat in the future from a supernova, and Spock trying to create a man-made black hole to save the planet. And ties in nicely with the lore that we already have for Star Trek. And then something going wrong, and his ship, along with Nero's ship, gets transported into the past, and Nero turns up just as Captain Kirk has been born aboard the USS Kelvin, and his father, who was number one on the Kelvin, is now in command of it, and he does the ship is lost. He uses the last of the ship's power to throw up the defences, evacuate the ship, get the shuttles out, along with Kirk's mother while she's in labour, actually giving birth to him, and he takes the ship under ramming speed under Nero's ship, and that changes the future. Creates an alternate an alternate timeline. I am so sorry. I'm so tired with this job. I can barely even speak right now. But I did promise I was going to try and put these out every Tuesday and Thursday. So, alternate timeline happens. We skip forward into the future a little bit. We see Spock and everybody growing up and how they meet each other, and the Kirk we meet in this film is a lot more reckless than the one we met in the 60s series and throughout the movies, just because he's grown up without a father in this alternate timeline. And there's a few little things that are scattered in through this film that kind of harkens back to Star Trek Enterprise, I want to say. I don't recall ever reading it or been told about it, but there is a part at the beginning of the movie, earlier on in the movie, whenever we first meet Kirk, and he's a small child, and he's nicked his uncle's car, and he's out joyriding, and the police and this hover motorcycle chases him down, but he loses control of the car, and it falls into what looks to be a canyon. But I'm thinking, in Star Trek Enterprise, was it the Xindi, I want to say? It's been that long since I watched, attack Earth, and they blast a big crevice right across the surface of the planet Earth. Now, is that the hole left by that weapon? I'm not sure. Whenever I was watching it, that was the first thing that sprung to mind, so I thought, okay, a little bit of fan service there. That's good. So, yes, we go on throughout the movie. We start to meet the other characters, and we get another look at the Kobayashi Maru test, and Kirk and Spock button heads over that. But during his court-martial, more or less, he's pulled in front of the higher-ups about cheating on the test, and they get the call that Vulcan is under attack by some sort of weapon. And there's a little piece on here, and I've never actually checked it for myself. Now, you would think, recording a Star Trek podcast, I would go and check this shit out before I start recording, but I didn't. When Enterprise finally arrives at Vulcan, it's behind the rest of the fleet. By the time he gets there, Nero's ship has taken out all the other ships that have gone before them, and in the wreckage in space, whenever Enterprise is flying through it all, there's supposed to be a little R2-D2 floating about in space. Now, I've seen a photograph online, but I believe absolutely nothing unless I see it with my own eyes when it comes to the internet. It doesn't take a genius to take a photograph and, add something like that on. But it does stand to reason, as J.J. Abrams was always saying how big a Star Wars fan he was as well, and he put that on there too, his little nod towards Star Wars. So obviously, he later got a job directing on 2 of the movies. And Star Wars. Although he did in Star Trek as well. But we'll get to that in the next podcast episode. In my mind, J.J. Abrams, great director. He's great at starting stuff, not so hot at finishing it. And I have to say, Star Trek Into Darkness is entertaining enough. But I was kind of like, the hell is that? At the same time, and of course, we did get a repeat behaviour whenever he went to Star Wars. He was good at that. Fairly good at that first film. That last film, not so much. So, back to Star Trek 2009, where we're at. We're at the planet right now. And I have notes here, and I keep losing my place. Sorry about that. They get to the planet, they hear there's like a lightning storm in space, similar to the one that occurred when Kirk was born. That was the big thing that set up that whole Kelvin thing at the start of the movie. Kirk breaks the protocol of the ship to convince Pike that a distress signal is a trap. When the Enterprise arrives, they find the fleet destroyed. That's where we're just at that. And the Narada, that's Nero's Romulan ship, that's drilling into Vulcan's core. The Narada attacks the Enterprise, and Pike surrenders. Well, he only gets the chance to surrender because Pike recognizes the Enterprise itself, and he actually stops the attack. Pike puts Spock in command whenever he goes to transport across to Nero's ship, or gets on the shuttlecraft, flies across, and he promotes Kirk to the first officer. And Kirk and Sulu and the chief engineer Olsen, you need to remember Scotty isn't on board Enterprise at this point. They do a space jump, which looks amazing on screen whenever they're, the cameras in their face and they're like in that nosedive. I actually seen how that effect was made, and it is so simply done that it would break your mind when you figure it out. So if you're the sort of person that doesn't like your effects been spoiled for films, I'm not going to spoil it for you here, but trust me, it doesn't take a heck of a lot of cash to actually make that effect yourself. All you need is a big mirror and an iPhone and a stepladder. That's all I'm going to say. That's all you need. So they jump onto the rig. The chief engineer's killed, but Kirk and Sulu manage to disable the drill, but they're not able to stop Nero from launching some red matter into Vulcan's core. This red matter is the stuff that old Spock used in the future to try and create the man-made black hole to save Romulus from this catastrophe, and unsuccessfully. So Nero drills a hole to the core, drops the thing down and makes a man-made black hole in the centre of Vulcan. So that's just going to go nasty. Excuse me, I just riffed it in your face. The Enterprise managed to save Spock's father and the High Council of Vulcan, but before the transporter beam manages to get hold of Spock's mother, she falls to her death. So you've got two of the main characters in the film here that have lost a parent figure in this first film, so there's a connection between the two of them there that they didn't have at the start of the movie. They're not friends, they don't get along, they're enemies in this movie. Nero tortures Pike to gain access to Earth's defences. He's going to head for Earth now after he's wiped out Vulcan. While in pursuit, Spock maroons Kirk on Delta Vega after Kirk attempts mutiny. He wants to go rescue Pike, but Spock is all up for getting back to headquarters and doing stuff by the book. On the planet, Kirk encounters an older Spock, the one from the future, the original timeline Spock. Leonard Nimoy himself, the legend, is on this snowball placed there by Nero. Turns out, when he went back in time through the original accident, Nero arrived 25 years before Spock did. So when Nero finally got his hands on Spock, blamed Spock for not just the loss of Vulcan, his own home planet, Romulus. He blames him for the death of his wife and family and everything. So he put Spock onto this planet, Delta Vega, so that he could watch the destruction of Vulcan. Kirk meets Spock. Spock kind of starts filling the new Kirk in on the memories he has of the old Kirk and the Enterprise crew from his timeline. And I'm not going to get into time travel stuff. You don't want to think time travel too much when it comes to movies, because you're thinking to yourself, okay, in this movie, old Spock ends up going back to the past. Through a mistake, he sends a crazy Romulan ship back. It changes the past. So, an alternate timeline. How, in one sense, how is this Spock having memories of a timeline that no longer exists? Like, everything he knew up to that point is now an alternate timeline. It's skewed into something completely different. So the future he's thinking of is a different future than what he came from. But you could say that because he travelled back, he's safe from the changes to the timeline. Just, you see what I'm saying here? That sort of stuff will absolutely fry your head, and the fact that I'm getting over this bloody COVID shot isn't helping matters either. I'm having serious trouble even focusing on my notes here, never mind trying to speak. So anyway, Spock tells Kirk, you and young Spock, the ship, the Enterprise, you're like flipping family here. You need each other to work together, and blah blah blah. The score. And they managed to actually, on the same planet, come across Scotty. The only thing I would say about this Star Trek movie is a lot of people are very conveniently laid out in the course of the story, like almost stupidly easily laid out. It's just like, even the fact that Kirk gets kicked off the Enterprise by Spock onto a planet that they're just passing by, and manages to meet the old Spock from the future, like literally lands within 2 or 3 football fields distance from him. And it's not like this isn't like The Empire Strikes Back or anything. You can use the argument that, Luke Skywalker crash landed in Dagobah, and like he was just, within spitting distance of Yoda's hut. But, in that movie at least you could say, well, Yoda was strong with the Force, and he was probably sitting there waiting on Luke turning up, because Ghost Obi-Wan has been, telling Luke one thing, come back and telling Yoda something else. So of course he could have used the Force to control that landing, even though it was a crash landing, controlled to where he wanted the ship to end up, but not so much in Star Trek. Gosh, I'm going on a lot of tangents tonight. Maybe I should have a COVID shot more often whenever I'm starting to record a podcast. I don't know. Hopefully this is entertaining for you guys. I'm having a blast. Right. Scotty helps him by devising a transwarp beam, allowing them to beam both him and Kirk on board the Enterprise while it's travelling at warp speed. Following the older Kirk, the older Spock's advice, Kirk provokes younger Spock into attacking him. See, the big thing is Kirk needs to get in. Old Spock says, Kirk, you need to be commanding the Enterprise. And the only way you can get the younger version of me to give up the captain's seat is to get him to show that he's emotionally compromised. And of course, Vulcans are very, very good at suppressing those emotions. And Kirk is like, what, this guy doesn't have emotions. He's like a robot. And old Spock tells him, look, I've just watched my home planet getting destroyed. I'm emotionally compromised. So he's saying, obviously, the younger version is too. So it doesn't take much when Kirk gets back on board the Enterprise to drive Spock crazy to Spock actually attacks him. He could quite easily have killed Kirk at this point in the movie. Where are we at now in these notes? I keep losing my pleth. This is a disgrace. After talking with Sarek's on board Enterprise, the younger Spock decides to help Kirk, and while the Enterprise hides itself within the gas clouds of Titan, Kirk and Spock beam aboard the Narada. Kirk fights with Nero, and they manage to rescue Pike from the ship. Spock leads the Narada away from Earth and sets. He's using older Spock's ship from the future to get the Narada to follow him. Enterprise beams Kirk, Pike and Spock back aboard after Spock sets his ship on a collision course with Nero's ship. A collide course. I need to write down my notes a lot better or type them out on the computer or something, because I just can't read my writing. I should have been a doctor. Aged. At the end of the film, Kirk offers help to Nero whenever his ship is critically damaged after the future ship that older Spock had. It's got the red matter on board, and then when it collides with Narada, it sets this stuff off, and another black hole starts to form in the centre of Nero's ship, so it's not going to get trailed in one way or the other. It's going to get actually compressed down. And Kirk, in a moment, the first moment really, in this movie, you kind of see the real Starfleet coming out on him. He offers Nero help to get off the ship, but Nero refuses. But the thing that got me was there's this new sort of humour in these movies in the past, like 2009 onwards. The sort of humour I'm talking about, that kind of, there was a lot of it in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was like even as far back as Friends, you had the same sort of humour. It's like Spock kind of questions Kirk's decision to offer advice to Nero, and Kirk is like, this is the Starfleet thing to do. I thought you would appreciate that. And Spock was like, no, pretty much not, sort of a thing. It's kind of like sarcastic, can't believe sort of a deal. And that humour, when it works right, it works right. But to come from a Vulcan, and the version we have of Spock and this new Kelvin timeline is a more emotional version of the Spock that we knew from the original series and movies. But that kind of humour at that point just didn't really go in the way that it should have went with me. But again, it's all down to your own perspective. You'll love something that somebody else absolutely detests. But me, I try to not be overcritical about the thing, but I don't want to be blowing it so hard that I'm not giving any downsides to anything. Like, I enjoy Star Trek and science fiction in general, but I'm not blind to the sort of stuff that just, doesn't really, in my mind, work. But again, if you like it, that's all good. Nero refuses to help, and Kirk gives the order to fire, dooming Narada to be consumed in the black hole, and the Enterprise is just about able to escape from it. And at the end of the movie, Kirk is promoted to captain, given command of the Enterprise, and Wild Pike is promoted to admiral. Spock encounters his older self, who persuades him to continue serving in Starfleet, encourage him to do what feels right for a change instead of what's logical. So Spock remains in Starfleet, becoming the first officer under Kirk, and the Enterprise warps off at the end of the movie, along with older Spock saying the famous line, "Where no one has gone before." The whole dialogue for that, or the monologue. So this is a decent movie. Don't get me wrong. It was a gamble. It was an absolute gamble to reboot something like Star Trek, and I think that had a lot to do with them eventually trying to do the same with Star Wars. But throughout the whole time that Star Trek and Star Wars have existed, like, one has helped the other in some certain way. It's like the success of the original Star Wars really did help with the launch of the Star Trek movies, and that's true. That let me see. Let's get some numbers for this. Where are we at now? I had a whole load of stuff written down here as far as numbers for the movie went. Alright. I can't find them, but I know it was a blockbuster hit when it came out. Gosh. Why the heck do I keep losing my notes of these things? I remember reading it about 20 minutes ago when I was going through this stuff online. There it is. The budget for the movie was $150 million, and the box office for it was $385.7 million. That is a shit ton of money. And it was very, very well taken in by the critics and the audience, both. And even me, okay, I'm a lifelong Trekkie fan. I was going to give it a go no matter what, and the fact that J.J. Abrams was directing it, as I said at the start, enjoyed his stuff pre-Star Trek, so I was in there for that. And the cast, very, very good. They even managed to get the same sort of vibe and feeling that the original cast had together as well. It was just very, very well done. But the only downside, again, for me was Peg, and we'll just leave it at that. So anyway, that's going to do it for this little chat on Star Trek 2009, the reboot. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.